Next week marks the start of fall camp on campuses around the country. And if they're not already, it feels like all eyes are going to be on Baton Rouge, Louisiana, with Lane Kiffin officially taking over for his first year as head coach of the LSU Tigers. Now, I'm going to get into some questions that I have for LSU going into this year, questions that I think are going to make or break their season. But before I do that, if you're an LSU fan, I just want you to close your eyes with me and think back to last year. Think back to this time last year, where you're coming off an offseason where in his final press conference of the season last year, Brian Kelly had said, "We'll see you in the national championship," famously. That was clipped and put everywhere. He's coming into his fourth year as head coach. It's officially his team. It's his program. You got Garrett Nussmeier coming back for his second year as a starter. He looked pretty good the year prior. Can he take that second year next step was the big question, but he's coming back. You got Blake Baker coming back for his second year as defensive coordinator. The defense took a massive step forward the year prior. And you go into fall camp, it seems like you have some questions answered. You're going into week 1 against Clemson, and everybody's hyping this game up to a point where they say whoever wins this football game is positioning themselves perfectly to make the college football playoff and make a deep run, because both of these teams are supposed to be so talented. They're supposed to be so great. And you go into that week 1 game and you beat Clemson at their home. And you hit the pause button at that moment. If I were to tell you at that moment that in, a handful of months' time, Brian Kelly would be fired mid-season, LSU would have finished the season 7-6, and you'd have Lane Kiffin as your head coach going into the next fall camp, you'd have probably told me I was on drugs. But alas, here we are. And I say all that to say, nobody knows what's going to happen. We don't have any crystal ball that's going to give us all the answers to everything that's going to happen here. But what I can tell you is that these 3 questions that I have, I fully believe are going to make or break your season. The answers to these 3 questions are the difference between you making a playoff run, potentially a deep playoff run, or just having another 7-5, 8-4 season. Because you do have the schedule that can get pretty hairy if things go off the rails early. So with that, let's get into these questions. Specifically, can LSU fix the problems that have held them down the previous years? The first question that I'm going to have on this team is number 1, who's your O-line? Let's look at last year and years prior. The O-line has just been horrendous. The O-line play has been terrible. Even whenever you had Will Campbell and Emory Jones, yes, pass pro, they were doing great in pass protection. I don't think Jaden Daniels hardly got touched all year in his senior year, but you couldn't run the football to save your life at all. Outside of Jaden Daniels, of course. He was a freak of nature. He was always able to break it loose. But with Garrett Nussmeier, you weren't able to run for positive yardage. You were, 126th in rushing last year. So the question is, number 1, who's going to be your offensive line? You've got Braylon Moore and Jordan Seaton. They essentially have their spots locked down at center and left tackle. But you got a whole bunch of other names that we're going to keep an eye on to see who else is going to fill in those other 3 spots. And it looks like Bo Bordelon, Weston Davis, Aliou Ba, Devin Harper, William Satterwhite, Jaquan Sprinkle, Jacoby Jones. All of them are going to be vying for those spots. There's going to be a lot of rotation in fall camp that we're going to be wanting to take a look at. But the question is, who are we going to see at that position specifically, or at those offensive line positions? What I would like to see, 5 to 6 guys, whether it's a small rotation or you just have your set 5. I want to see those guys set before we get into September. I don't want to still be piecemealing together the offensive line going into the final week of fall practice, going into week 1, because you do have such a big game week 1. People are going to clown on Clemson all they want. They can still come in and they can ruin the first week of your season. They can ruin Lane Kiffin, his first game in Tiger Stadium. So you need to make sure you have those guys set, because your entire season, really, I could boil this video down to your entire season can be won or lost on the line of scrimmage. Because the other set of questions we have are on the defensive tackle side. You got a lot of young talent there. You've got a lot of freshmen coming in that you're expecting to play meaningful minutes there. We got to know how they're actually playing. And it's also going to mean that a lot of the questions that we have in fall camp aren't officially going to get answered, because no matter how good the offensive line looks, we're going to be looking at them against a very young defensive line. So they can be pushing and shoving everybody around in the interior offensive line. Those guards in the center, they can be pushing around your D tackles, and the rushing lanes can open up and things can look great. But at the end of the day, the question is, how good are your DTs, and are they ready for SEC football immediately, or meaningful football immediately, because you got to go into Clemson. Or Clemson has to come to you, but you still got to go through them. And then the last position battle that I'm looking for is wide receiver. I don't think you lack any talent at wide receiver. I just want to know who I'm going to be looking out for this year. Jackson Harris, definitely probably going to be looking out for him. Jace Brown, probably going to be looking out for him as well. Phillip Wright, the only returning receiver that you had from last year's squad. Let's see if he can go and work himself into a starting spot or a meaningful contributor. I know Lane Kiffin had said previously that they didn't want to go and get the big name in the transfer portal. They'd rather have 8 or 9 guys that they can rotate in there. If you have a new quarterback in Sam Leavitt, praying to God that he gets healthy and stays healthy, and he has to figure out that connection with 8 or 9 different receivers, or maybe you're just betting on 4 or 5 of them actually taking that next step forward. Even then, he's got to make that connection with a handful of different receivers, get the timing down, all of that. There's a lot involved there. So who are your receivers going to be? How's your connection going to be with Sam Leavitt? Those are a few of the questions that I have within that position battle. But really, I want to know who I should expect to start where going into September, so that final week of practice going into the Clemson game, you have all of your set pieces there. Now it's just a matter of getting them all to play together, getting them all to meld and be ready for week 1. So that's question 1. Can we fix the offensive line, the defensive line? Can we get a solid answer on who is going to be playing at what position? Question 2, how does this defense perform? Specifically, how does this defense perform against tempo and against a running quarterback? The two banes of your existence on defense last year. Take a look at what Marcel Reed and Jalen Milroe have done to you the last 2 years. Anytime you face a running quarterback, it is like your kryptonite. It's like Blake Baker's kryptonite. But the nice part is it is something that Lane Kiffin does very well, is the ability to work with a mobile quarterback and the ability to run tempo. So with everything else that Blake Baker does so well, with giving you the exotic looks, with creating havoc in the backfield and creating havoc on the defensive side of the football, is the input from Lane Kiffin going to help Blake Baker to, for lack of a better term, learn how to tackle a running quarterback, to learn how to get somebody down whenever they have even numbers, even hats, and they've got another rushing threat besides their normal running back? That's a big question that I have, and we want to see that in fall camp. We want to see how those adjustments are being made. So here's some things that I specifically don't want to hear in fall camp. I don't want to hear about Sam Leavitt just gashing the defense for an entire drive or multiple drives at a time. It's probably going to happen early in fall camp, and even then it might not be Sam Leavitt that's doing it. It might be Hassan Longstreet. They might just want to keep Leavitt a little bit more healthy with his foot or his ankle. But I don't want to hear about quarterbacks just gashing the defense play after play and them not being able to work against a running quarterback. I also want to just see how the defense is playing against tempo. I don't want to see that they were letting up consistently big or explosive plays against the offense because they were getting tired or they were getting winded. Because this year, you are going to be playing 4 of the top 5 fastest offenses, or projected fastest offenses in college football, in Ole Miss, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Tennessee. 4 of the 5 fastest from everything that I've researched. So you get to see it in practice every day, which is awesome. You're going to get to see a mobile quarterback and a tempo offense. You're going to have to learn how to stop that in practice, but you getting the chance to do that is going to pay dividends down the road, I fully believe. And the third question I have, and this is a simple question that I think all LSU fans have had over the last 2 years, 3 years or so. Can you just run the football? Can you get positive yardage when you're trying to run the football? Can you get 3 to 4 yards when you absolutely need 3 to 4 yards with your running back? Whether you're trying to run the clock down or whether you just need to be able to reliably get some positive rushing yards to open up the passing game, it hasn't been able to be done over the last couple of years. You can say it's a talent issue. You can say maybe Caden Durham didn't live up to what his potential was. Harlem Berry, yeah, he was a freshman last year, so you didn't expect a ton out of him, but maybe you were expecting a little bit more of an explosive rushing attack over the last couple of years. Really, it seems like the scheme has been what is holding you back the most. So, number one, Lane Kiffin, Charlie Weiss, how does that rushing scheme open up? Now, one of the best kept secrets, and it's not really much of a secret anymore, a lot of people have been talking about it, is Lane Kiffin. Yes, he's got very explosive offense. Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin, very explosive offense. They can pass the ball all around the field, but they're sneakily one of the better rushing teams in the entirety of the SEC. Usually top 5 in rushing in the SEC on any given year. And I think average over the last 5 years, they've been at number 1 or number 2 on rushing yardage as a whole in the SEC. So how do we get this rushing game and run game opened up? A lot of that is going to hinge on the offensive line and that position battle that we talked about in the very beginning. But you've also got the talent at running back now. You brought Dylan Jones in from Wisconsin, which it sounds like from all accounts that I've heard of people who have been boots on the ground in Baton Rouge during spring practice, they're expecting a lot out of Dylan Jones. He was injured last year. Doesn't mean that he can't come and have a really breakout year at LSU this year. You still got Harlem Berry. You still got Caden Durham. Both of those guys have all the talent in the world that you could want in that running back room. The question is, can they hit a hole? And can they run fast once they get past it? If they can, I think you're going to be in good company. I think you're going to be in a good position there as long as those holes get opened up. Again, last year you were 126th in rushing. Ole Miss was 44th. 44th is pretty dang good, especially considering you do have all FBS teams loaded in there, including your service academies that essentially just run the triple option and almost never throw the ball. So there was even a year where Ole Miss was 3rd overall in rushing. I think that was 2023, meaning if they need to figure out how to run the ball, they can do it. Charlie Weiss and Lane Kiffin know how to open up the run game. So that's a good thing. It's just a question that I want answered. And the answer that I want to hear is that you were able to consistently rush for positive yardage. Whether it's 4, 5, 6 yards, I just don't want you getting blown up in the backfield every other play like it seemed like you were doing specifically with Bernard Gooden last year. A guy like him was just blowing through the interior of that offensive line and was consistently dropping running backs for negative yardage. I truly believe the answers to these 3 questions are going to be the hinge point between you making and potentially making a deep run in the college football playoff, or you just having another 8-4 or 7-5 season. You have this schedule where if you're not ready and you don't have these things figured out, it can totally blow up in your face. But you also have the schedule where if you do have these things figured out, you can easily see yourself going 10-2, maybe even 11-1 if you steal an extra game that you're not technically supposed to, and be well positioned for the playoffs. But LSU fans out there, other LSU fans, what did I miss? What are the other questions that you want to make sure are answered going into the season? Are you excited for this year going into the season? I don't know how you can't be. This is one of the most exciting years I can remember as an LSU fan going into the season. We didn't know how Jaden Daniels was going to be or how he was going to look going into his senior year. I remember there were still question marks going into his senior year about Garrett Nussmeier or Jaden Daniels, who's supposed to be the starter, and plenty of people were on Nussmeier's side. We kind of knew what we were supposed to get into in 2019, but we didn't know to the extent that we were going to get into it there. I think there's just so much excitement around the program right now that I cannot wait for kickoff on September 5th, I believe it is, against Clemson. If you're an LSU fan, if you're a college football fan, and you like the content, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We are on the road to 500 subscribers before the end of the season. It's a lofty goal, but I think we can do it. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.